start with how this happened, how we are connected.
Sure.
So it's from Palabora days.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you knew, did you ever know me as a youngster?
No.
But you knew my dad?
Yeah, absolutely. I worked with your dad for quite a while, but we never met.
So how did you end up in Palabora?
Very simply, I was in the UK and I had my architectural business, and it was around 2008. I'd just been divorced and I was on my own with my little dog, and I was looking forward to a Christmas lunch for one with a paper hat and a whistle. And I hadn't seen my mum for 10 years, who lived in Palabora. So I thought, what the heck? I could work from anywhere if I had my laptop with me. So I came to see Mum for Christmas in 2008 and 2007. And my brother wanted to retire, and he said, come over, take over the business on the mine and what have you. The British economy at that point was in dire straits. It was panning. And I was designing about 4 different restaurants, but the owners were pulling up the drawbridge because finance was being withdrawn. So I thought, well, what am I doing in the coal country? I've just left the town that is, the town of 2 summers, and I'm sitting here in the freezing winter in England. There's nothing keeping me here. So I just made the decision. I thought, okay, there's a business for me back in Palabora in South Africa. It became a no-brainer. So I sold up everything, and my little border collie went to a sheep farm. She was happy, and that was it.
But what business is it that you do?
In Palabora?
Yeah, as a whole. Well, we'll get all into all the circus stuff later, because it's pretty cool.
Well, when I finally settled down, I had studied architecture at UCT for a short while. I didn't complete the course. And when I got to the UK, eventually to London, I went to the RIBA, the Royal Institute of British Architects, and they said, no, you're going to start again. And I wasn't prepared to do that because I needed to earn an income. So I started Hartman Design Associates, which is a design and build company. So I designed it and I built it. And I think I mentioned that I ended up in the music business. And it was a terrific time in my life because you got passed from one to the other, and
But how old were you when this happened?
I was probably 24, 25 when that happened, after I'd been traveling.
So now the music business side of things is really interesting, because some of the names that you've mentioned are really big names.
Yeah.
So. And then you're in your prime also for Jawling at that time.
Yeah, totally.
So
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's talk about that. So how did you get, or who was the first person that introduced you into the music industry, or how did that happen?
Okay, there's a little bit of a backstory to that. There's a lady, she's passed away unfortunately, called Anita Roddick, who started and owned the Body Shop. Ladies Cosmetics. I believe there's an outlet in Joburg, but it's all over Europe. And they also introduced franchising into the UK and Europe. And she was prolific. I sold her a chair, an office chair, and it was called a Vertebra, which I imported from Italy into my design build company. And it formulated to your back, and no matter what you did in the chair, it went with you. She was so intrigued by this that I went to see her in her office in a place called Littlehampton, south of England. And we got talking. And I told her that I'd studied architecture in Cape Town, and, that was my love. And she went out and came back with 7, in the old days, pre-digitizing, the rolls, architectural rolls. And she had 7 of them. And she said, I've got these 7 projects. Take a look. And I sat there and I was smirking and giggling. And she said, what? I said, this can't happen. You can't do this. This will fall down and. So she said to me, what could you do for me? I said, well, I'll cut out all this bullshit and I'll do the job properly. And she said, when can you start? Now, the proviso from her and her husband, Gordon, was that they would give a youngster or an upcoming entrepreneur, businessman, an opportunity. But once you're up and running, they would tell you, and then they'd take on somebody else and let you carry on, which is exactly what happened. I finished those 7 projects for her, and she said, by the way, you've got a meeting with John Smythe at Sony Music. Don't be late, 12 o'clock. And so I went to Sony Music, just off Tottenham Court Road in London. And I walked in, he was the managing director of Sony Music.
Oh, wow.
And he said, right, the post room is down on the ground floor. I need it in a different place. And I want you to do this, that, and that. And I'm thinking, oops, when do I talk money? And eventually I said to him, well, this is all going to cost a little bit. He said, I don't care, do it. And that was the start. And then I got passed from one to the other. The next big one was EMI music. And then it was Bertelmann's, which is a classical music. And then it was, it just went on and on and on. And I did it for 25 years in London. So just working in those, designing their office buildings. You don't get to build much new in London. So it was a lot of reconstruction within a given space. And there's studios and
so if we, because this is the problem that we have here, as you can hear, the sound, the acoustics is not so lucky. So luckily today we've got apps for it and Tessas for it,
Yeah.
But so you would be able to take this garage, for example, and turn it into a studio.
Yeah. And then the immediate answer is all about insulation and then sound and sound waves and so on. But yeah, very easily.
During this time, you probably also then met some of the big names in the industry.
Yes, yes, I did. And you won't be surprised to hear that being in that industry, I went to a concert 3 or 4 times a week.
Isn't that awesome?
I mean, it's just it was just there, So yes, I did, and strangely enough, this is going to sound a bit odd, but I was speaking to my dad on the phone. He was in Zambia, and I said to him, "Oh, I've met this one and that one and that one," and he said to me, "Son, they all put their trousers on one leg at a time, just like you," and that was it. And I think the reason I got on with some of them quite well is I was never
starstruck.
Never. I was never in awe of what they did. They did what they did. I did what I did. And that was it, So, yeah, I met a few, quite nice people. And funnily enough, they're all very nice. I didn't meet any princes or princesses in the industry. They were all... And I'm talking about mid-70s onwards into the 80s.
Some of the names that I read there, was it Robert Plant?
Yeah.
So you met Robert Plant?
Planty, as we called him. But I didn't actually, strangely enough, I didn't actually meet him in a music environment. I had a flat on the side of Primrose Hill, which is near London. It's near the big aviary in London. And Primrose Hill is an arty sort of place. And I used to have to do my own laundry in a laundromat. And the local pub, my washing cycle was 2 pints of beer and the drying cycle was 1 pint. And Robert Plant lived just down the road. So he would come into the pub and he was just Planty. And that was it. And we just became friends.
So what is he like as a person in real life, like and like stature-wise?
Yeah.
Is he a big guy? Because it's difficult when you see the guys on stage or in music videos. They larger than life, right?
Yeah. He's bigger than I am, bulky wise, but no, he was just an ordinary guy. He was just amazing. I can tell you a little off the wall story.
Yeah.
I had a market stall in Petty Lane, just for fun. And I was selling those tie-dyed garments that came out of Afghanistan, out of the Hindu Kush. And the shop where I bought my supplies was called the Hindu Kush. And I was standing there one day resupplying, and he walked in. And he said to Peter, the proprietor, he said, "Is my sock ready?" And it was a crocheted, knitted sock with a leather sole on it, about a meter long. And he walked out with a single sock, and I stopped him. I said, "Planty, a single sock? What are you going to do with that?" And he just looked at me, and the penny dropped. I said, "Oh, okay, bye. See you on Saturday in the pub." But it was, but he was just a down-to-earth, ordinary guy.
And did you meet any of the other members of the band?
No, I didn't. I went to the concerts and was in the audience, but no, I didn't. No, he was just a pub buddy.
Is there, when you were working in the studio, did you ever, what other bands did you, or big names did you meet there, and how was that? How was those encounters like?
In the studios, I think the only real recording studio experiences I had was with Mutt Lange, who's a music producer of, some note these days. But he was young and struggling then, and I used to sit with him. But I had no idea. I mean, I was a technophobe. I just designed things. But that was the only studio experience I had. But I used to get backstage passes all the time. And that was really from the music execs in EMI, for example. Peter Reichardt was the managing director there. And I worked in his building for about a year and a half, just doing various things. And he would just say to me, "Charlie, I don't want to go to this here." Mm-hmm. And I actually went as the managing director of EMI to quite a few concerts, but I learned to escape very quickly after.
So a lot of the people that you met, were they big names by the time you met them, or were they up and coming?
No, they were okay. I met Mick Jagger, believe it or not, in a lift in EMI, and I got into the lift. Peter Reichardt, the MD, and Jagger got into the lift with me, and I was petrified in a corner. It was very funny because Peter Reichardt said to me, "Charlie, well done. You've done a great job." And I said, "How on earth would you know? You're in your ivory tower." He said, "Oh, by the level of complaints." And I haven't had any. So that's good enough for me. When we reached reception, and I let them go out in front of me, I said, "By the way, Peter, your reception's a bit ropey." Jagger looked around, and he said, "Charlie?" "Yeah." He said, "Fix it." And I went, "Okay." "What is that?" And I shot back upstairs to the financial director. I said, "Jagger says fix it. What does he mean?" He said, "Fix it." So I designed a new reception as well for them. A little anecdote to that was, whenever I did something, I always put a little signature that was, that I knew about. And what was very funny was I designed the reception desk, which was very curved, it was a curvature thing, very curved. And at the end was a column with a glass top. That was for the motorcycle messengers. They roar around London with documents and things. And that was where they would sign, because they're covered in grease and stuff to keep it clean. But anyway, it was a very ornate, curved desk. And Peter Reichardt phoned me about 3 months after I completed there, and he said, "You think you're very smart, don't you?" And I said, "If you're phoning me 3 months later, I think I'm smarter than you. Why?" He said, "I came down the back stairs and saw for the first time. The desk was actually that semiclaver in music, that first symbol, the G with the tail. The tail was that tower where the motorcycle messengers signed. And from above, it was that semiclaver."
Oh, wow.
And I said, that's just me. I always did something. And I said, "So yeah, I am smarter than you. It took you 3 months to notice." But it was on that level. It was all fun. It was all, it wasn't. We never had a serious business meeting in all the years I was there. It was, "Why are you asking me? Do it."
And since the 70s, or obviously the industry has changed a lot, the music side and all that. But how has the backside of it changed? Because for me, the biggest change I've noticed is there hasn't been like a band There hasn't been a band
No,
in the top 10 Billboard charts in the last 20 years. It's all solo artists now.
It has. And you've got things like auto-tune and technology. And I think, this is only my humble opinion, but I think it started to change at the boy band era. You know, the manufactured boy bands, they do a great job, and, you know, they're very popular and all those things. But I think that's when you started to miss the bands. And an example of that was Cream. And Cream used to play in pubs just for fun.
Yeah.
And, you know, you would go in there and not know it was them because they used some other name. But they used to do that. And it was great, you know.
And I read in your the little write-up that you sent, I'm really interested in the Mutt Lange saga, because there we've got some other names that a lot of people will know,
Sure.
like Shania Twain.
Sure.
So did you meet her in your life?
No, I never did. But I'll tell you a little funny story about me being... We were best friends. We sort of grew up together. That's why I was attached to him.
You and Mutt Lange?
But I was single, so I was always the token bloke. When he was going to meet a new artist, he would generally arrange a dinner in a smart restaurant and so on. I was actually stood up by Tina Turner because he'd arranged this whole thing. And he used to call me and say, right, I'm having a dinner and I need a spare bloke to make up the numbers, and you're it. And he wouldn't tell me who it was. So we're sitting in this very plush restaurant, and she didn't turn up. So he said to me, you've just been stood up by Tina Turner. But I never met her. But, you know, Mutt started very humbly, and there was only one South African soccer player in the whole of the British Football League, a guy called Colin Viljoen, and he played at Norwich City. So Mutt and I used to go up on the train to watch him, just to watch Norwich because of him. And their music that they played at the interval wasn't up to his liking. So he actually approached him and said, I'll rewrite this for you. What do you think? And he did. And that was his introduction into writing and production and so on. He started very humbly with a band called Clover from San Francisco, and the backup singer and harp player, the music, what do you call mouth organ, was Huey Lewis.
Oh wow!
And Mutt said to him, "You're wasted here. You're going solo," and set him up. So I was part of that. So not part of the Huey Lewis, inauguration or coming into being, but I was there when we were doing Clover. We used to play soccer in breaks and things like that together. And then he moved on to the Boomtown Rats, and he did Rat Trap for them. And then people started to notice him. If you look at his bio, there are not many people, the bands are just endless. The most notable, of course, is Def Leppard. Yeah. And they were performing, but he basically took them apart and rebuilt them. And then, Rick Allen, the drummer, lost his arm. Yeah. And there is a video out on YouTube where Mutt visited him in hospital. And he said, don't just lie there. You've still got an arm and 2 feet. Do this and move your feet. And it was a technician friend of Rick Allen's who built this thing. And there are only 2 sort of instruments really that you would know as a drummer where you use all 4 limbs. And it's a church organ and the drums. But so he got him using his left foot where his left hand would have been on the snare drum. It was now like a church organ. He was playing the pedals to get the same effect. And they perfected that. Mutt Lange is known as the 6th member of Def Leppard. Yeah. He's very pedantic, hard taskmaster. If you didn't like it, you did it over and over. And actually a funny story with Clover, because this could probably lead on to Stevie Lange, who was his wife at the time. In the studio, they couldn't harmonize. Alec, the main singer, and Huey could not get their harmonies together. And Mutt just stopped everything. He said, right, everybody take your clothes off. And we all went, what? If you're staying in this room, take your clothes off. So we all did. And those boys hit the harmony at the first take so they could get dressed again. But he was very pedantic. And the thing that he did with Def Leppard, which is unusual, he said, don't write a song and bring it to me. Write what you want to write, snippets from all of you, and bring that in, and then we'll work it together. I mean, it took a year to produce, an album for them, but he was spot on. And he gave them... AC/DC were in America struggling, and their producer said, I've booked you a flight to London. You're going to see Mutt Lange. He'll sort you out. And he did. The Shania Twain thing I was never a part of, but he met her and he started recording her, and he produced a lot of her music, and he wrote a lot of her music with her. And they ended up getting married until he messed that up. But
okay, so how do you mess up? Because Shania Twain is gorgeous, right? She's like one of the most beautiful women on the planet, probably. And then you mess it up with what? Like, is that a bit too close to her?
Well, it's a bit too close to her. I mean, look, he's a fiercely independent guy, but it is out there. It's on all the social media. He had an affair with the housekeeper and the nanny to their child, and she found out. Ironically, she is now married to that housekeeper's husband.
Oh wow!
So they just, yeah. I mean, it just happened eventually. But she is now married. He's a French guy, and who was the husband of the nanny. But it happened much later.
Full circle.
Yeah, but Mutt messed up basically. He's a recluse and a vegetarian and all those things. I haven't seen him for quite a while. But if I needed to, then my sister from another mother was married. We all grew up together in Zambia. And Stevie Lange, she uses that name now. She's a voice coach and an artist on her own. And so if I needed to get hold of Mutt, she's in regular contact with him still. I could do that, but I leave him alone. I get people, including members of my own family, who say, hey, I've got pictures of Mutt when he was, 12 and 14 and what have you, and I'm not going to do that. I respect what he's got and how he wants to live his life. But another notable thing he did was he co-wrote with Bryan Adams the Everything I Do It For You, for that Robin Hood,
for the Robin Hood
movie. Yeah. And that went to the top of the charts for about 20 weeks. It was unheard of in those days. But what you asked me earlier about the bands, that's when bands were bands, and they knocked on doors and got contracts and so on. Nowadays, it's, you're lucky if you get through the front door.
Now, that song, just to... So, I think I was in high school when that movie came out. And every single person I knew, that was the song that you asked your friend who's the DJ at the Socky at school to play because you wanted a close dance with that girl. And it was the longest one, right? So on that song, I dated a girl. She was very popular, Miss Palabora at the time.
Okay.
And on that song, I got to touch her behind.
Oh,
because we were close dancing, right?
Yeah.
So thanks, Mutt.
Yeah, thanks, Mutt. I've never understood the Socky because you travel far with that thing, and I'm sure you touch a few butts on your way. Yeah. But anyway,
some guy butts as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But so he did that. I mean, his bio just is endless.
Is he still active in the industry?
Not so much, he's bought a big estate in New Zealand, and he spends a bit of his time there, and it's all eco-friendly, and he's not quite vegan, he's vegetarian, and he's an earth person now, and he doesn't have to. His main house is on the side of Lake Geneva, and Phil Collins was his neighbor for many years. So yeah, I mean, the music business is what it is now. I feel for any up-and-coming artist because you've got a struggle on your hands unless you win America's Got Talent or something and you get noticed.
America's Got Talent, to me, personally, is very cringy. I can't watch it because first of all, I don't believe that celebrities have got the right to tell you what to do with your life because, listen, dude, you are an actor. You don't even have a strong enough personality. If you had a strong personality, you wouldn't be a good actor.
Sure.
So now you have got all these different personalities. You've been married 10 times. You've got 16 children. And you want to come and tell me that I'm an immoral person for not voting or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's changed a lot in the sense that those guys used to make millions out of their art. And it doesn't happen anymore.
No.
We had a very, very talented young girl on here, local girl, that's now an actor or an actress now. She's still starting in the industry, but beautiful voice, amazing stage presence, and she's not getting noticed.
No, she's not. It's always been anathema to me, having spent a little time in that industry. I watched an America's Got Talent. I can't remember the girl's name or the movie, but she sang the title song and went on to America's Got Talent and sang it. And Simon Cowell and the rest of them, they were just speechless. And this girl was bringing this and I apologize, I can't think of it, this very well-known song and sang it, and they didn't know what to do with themselves. So the juxtaposition or the anathema that I struggle with, that girl has got talent pouring out of every pore in her body, and she has to go on a talent show to exhibit her talent. You go to any of these stage shows, the productions, the big productions in London, you listen to those voices, whatever the show is, Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat. And a friend of ours, who lives in Palabora now, was part of that. Those stage performers in those stage shows, their voices, their talent, it's just not recognized. They're in that role for a year or two, whatever it is, and then just fall off the bus. You never hear from them again. I don't understand that, because when I was working in the industry, the A&R department, which is artists and repertoire, their job is to go around to those shows, to go to wherever they need to go to spot talent. And I'll give you an example of that at Sony, when I was at Sony. Graham was the postboy. And he phoned me one day and said, "Charlie, I need you to come and see me." And I thought, why would I want to come and see the postboy? But okay. He said, he took me up to the 3rd floor. And I said, "Wait a minute, this is the director's floor." And he said, "I'm a director." I said, "Come on, you're the postboy." He said, "Not anymore." His story was, he went to a place called Chalk Farm, which is a notorious venue for artists and so on. It's a great place. And it's a roundhouse in Chalk Farm. And there was this girl knocking out her best songs and so on. And he walked up to her and he said, "If I offer you a contract at Sony, will you sign on it?" And of course,
he's the postboy.
Yeah, and of course, her shoes fell off at excitement. And he went to the managing director and he said, "Listen to this." And he said, "I'm busy." "No, you've got to listen to this." It was Sade.
Oh, wow.
And she insisted she would sign the contract with Sony on condition that Graham looked after her, because he was the one who approached scouted her. That's the job of the A&R. That's their job. They have to go out and do this. And he's the postboy. He ended up on the 3rd floor with his own parking spot in the West End of London. Great story. I love stories like that. But that can happen, but it's not happening now.
Obviously, I've also been in bands a lot in my life, and we were fortunate that Barney Simon actually noticed us at a gig that we were doing, and then he ran with us and became like a manager type promoter or whatever, and that led to us sharing a stage with some bigger bands, which then led to other people seeing us, and then, okay, you can now have the chance to become a recording artist with I forget the guy's name now. Anyway, and David Gresham.
Okay. Yes.
And we had to do a tour, and then the stuff starts. "Oh, your hair's too long. That's not what we want anymore. The crowd likes this. Yeah. Also, you guys are a 3-piece. We need a backup vocalist. And your songs are too long." And but So I left the band then because it became a job. It wasn't fun anymore.
It wasn't fun anymore.
No.
I understood.
But this morning, a friend of mine came here to have a look at our setup and help with sound. And he is arguably one of the most phenomenal musos I've met in my entire life. And we were talking about the irony of these very talented people that live among us that will never, they just get the scraps. He's giving music lessons to kids at school to make a living.
Sure.
But this guy, I asked him, I said to him, off by heart right now, how many of the major classic songs, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, Queen, how many of those big hits can you play if I put a guitar in your hand right now and plug you into the system? Off by heart, not with sheet music. Sure. He said, well, probably about 200-300.
Yeah.
Including the lead pieces.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
And then another friend of mine, also in Zanin, he's a multi-instrumentalist. He's a better drummer than what I am, and he's not even a drummer, right?
Right. Yeah.
And he's a better guitarist than most guitarists I know, and he's not even a guitarist. And they can all sing. And that to me is ironic because you have these phenomenal musos here. And then you listen to the crap that you've got on radio.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah, it's actually excruciating. I can't listen to the radio anymore because if I hear another Kaptein or Ripeke Wyne or it doesn't, there's no musicality in there whatsoever.
It's manufactured, isn't it? And it's by the corporates for their own ends. And I was watching a video the other day, and it was some well-known artist, and it was like Snoop Dogg or something, and he's getting 2 cents per record now, you know,
and the recording houses are getting all the money.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And what they do is they own your back catalogue, and they sell that wherever they want to. But here's an interesting thing that might still work in the music industry. When I was at EMI, I had to do a building for a company called KBW. And it was part of EMI. And what they did was they took the catalogues that they owned, let's say a song, you know, that
Bryan Adams catalog.
Bryan Adams, whatever. And if an advertising agency or a TV show or whatever needed a snippet of music, they had the technology in those days to take a segment of the music and cut it down. They'd trim a percentage of every note. So if your advert was 2 minutes 20, but the song was 4 minutes 20, they could bring it down and you wouldn't even notice the difference. It would be an excerpt from the song. And that, I thought, what a good business for advertising, for film, for TV, for whatever. If you wanted a song because it was raining, you know, or you wanted background music for that, these guys would use the technology and trim it to fit. Made a fortune. Now that's using existing music. That doesn't answer the question that you and I are perplexed about. Why is this talent, this guy, the multi-instrumentalist? Why? I don't understand it. But you know what? If we were to try and kick this off again, we'd hit a brick wall because, you know, the conglomerates have this all wrapped up now. And you just don't get bands anymore.
No.
Which is...
It's very sad because I've seen what it's done to our kids, for example. I know a lot of kids, my son included, Tessa's daughter included, who are very musical and very artistic. Yeah. But you know, this is another difference also. In the States, they spot a 6-year-old that can play drums and they approach the parents and say, listen, when he goes to school, we want him to come to our academy and we will pay for all the schooling. Exactly. And by the time that kid reaches high school, he's one of the top guitarists, drummers, whatever, in the industry. Yeah. So when he gets to high school, he starts recording with big names as a muso. And then when he leaves high school, he's got a job. He's got a career in music. In our country, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. No. So the parents will come and clap hands or applause or whatever when your son plays 2 notes on a ukulele at the high school talent show. Sure. But they kind of just, you know, they don't take it seriously enough to send him off to music school or the School of the Arts or... And then secondly also, I'd like to send my son to School of the Arts, and Tessa wants to send her daughter to School of the Arts, but you can't afford it.
No.
It's
No.
ridiculous.
No. But the converse of that American setup is when they tire of you, they dump you.
Yeah.
And you're on the street, and that's it. You know, there's no longevity, there's no pension attached to it, there's no anything. You know, you're there for as long as they want you to be there. I know I'm sounding cynical, but it's what it is. I can't really talk too much about the South African music scene because I was in London throughout most of that. I missed it a lot. You know, I think I mentioned to you Manfred Mann. He was South African. And the tie-up there was, again, Stevie Lange was going out with a guy called Chris Thompson, who was the vocalist for Manfred Mann after Paul Jones left. And Chris and I became quite good friends, but it was only because of the connection with Stevie. He's a sheep farmer now, you know. It's Manfred Mann is just not there anymore. It's I actually read a funny little anecdote about that. You know, Blinded by the Light. The one thing I did know was when there was a very high note that Chris Thompson hit as the vocalist, but he would go off and have a drink of his drink, whatever it was, on his amplifier, and the noise was still happening. Manfred had his finger on an organ key that was exactly the same pitch as Chris's voice.
So if he couldn't reach it, then he just
he wandered off and had a drink, you know, from his, you know, the Coke on top of the amplifier, but the noise was still going on. I could never work it out until I was there one day backstage and looked, and Manfred is standing there with one finger, and Chris would come back and open his mouth, and it was very funny.
So then also you mentioned Meryl Streep.
Yeah, that wasn't music industry related. It's quite happenstance. It just took place. My girlfriend at the time, Maria, and I went to Greece for a holiday, and we booked into this resort that had 3 cottages and 2 bays in the sea, and we were there alone. And one day we said, okay, we're going to just go down to the next town and have lunch. And when we got there, the proprietor said, where are you staying? And we told him. He said, you're not going to get back. And I said, of course we are. We live there. And that's, you know, we've got another 2 weeks to go. He said, you're not. So I said to her, come on, drink up, we're going, and find out what's going on. And he was right. They were Pentechnicans, and how they got them down these little narrow roads going down to the beach, I have no idea. But we were stopped every 100 meters. You can't, you know, by a guy with a high-vis and a radio and a walkie-talkie. And eventually I just crashed my way all the way down because we lived there. Yeah. All our possessions were there. So we got there. And the production manager, S, came and said, you know, we're filming. I said, I can see that. But, you know, travel agent, nobody told us about this, not even the owner of the resort. I say resort, there were 3 cabins.
And also, we live here.
And we live here. Yeah. And then the son came out, the owner's son came, he said, please don't park your car here. And I said, where do you want me to park? It's right outside. We were at the top one, and there were 2 villas either side, just about 10 steps down. And I said, get out of my way, I'm going. If you want to park it somewhere. Anyway, the net result of all of that was I was sitting on the balcony reading, and everything went hush-hush. And these people came down on the right-hand side, and that was that. And then the majority of them left, and cars roared away and everything else. And as I was reading my book, out of the corner of my eye, I could see this little head pop around the wall of this villa down there. And then we were told who it was, and this little head kept popping round. So I'm reading my book, and I just did that, you know, and carried on reading. And then on the other side was Pierce Brosnan, and the film was Mamma Mia, the ABBA film. They were there to do that. I despise and hate Dancing Queen, because at 4 o'clock in the morning, because the light was right, they did Dancing Queen. And by take number 16, you know, you needed strong caffeine to get through. But that aside, when I did that to her, the little head disappeared. There was only one little restaurant, like a taverna thing, there. and we had our table. When we got there, it was obviously crowded with the film crew and everybody else, but our little table was there. So we sat down for dinner, and the proprietor came along with his most expensive bottle of red wine and put it on the table, and I went, that's going to bend the plastic a little bit. And I said,
bend the plastic a little bit.
And anyway, so we enjoyed it. And I said to him, how do you want me to pay for this? He said, you don't. It's compliments of that table over there. So when I looked up, Meryl Streep had her menu, and she went, and we just became friends, and we had dinner with her every night thereafter.
Oh, wow.
But again, you know, she puts her trousers on one leg at a time, like,
I was just
like
about
we
to say,
all do.
I was about to say the same thing again, you know. Why do these people, is it a flaw in our makeup, in our DNA, but why do people continuously like worship these celebrities almost? You know,
I don't know.
like, okay, so you're filming a set, dude. Like, listen, I've booked my place here. Okay, this is not some goddess, right, or some god. No, I actually just want to go past and get my stuff and chill. You know, I see it here as well. Like, for the life of me, Ricky Gervais is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And I loved when he said at the Golden Globe Awards, listen, when you get your statue, come up here, get your little award, thank your God, and piss off.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want to hear change the world, globe.
Yeah.
You're just you're a human being, right?
That's all
Kick
it is. Just go. Yeah. I don't know if it's aspiration, whether we aspire to being that, or whether it's envy. I don't think it's envy, because I don't think we're educated enough in that field. I think it's awe. You know, you hold these people in awe. You think they're very special.
Probably.
I'll tell you a little story about Emma Thompson. I think I mentioned her, the actress.
Yeah.
I lived at the end of the number 57 bus lane in a place called Cholmondeley Gardens in West Hampstead in London. There were 4 of us in a flat. There were 4 blocks of flats which made a quadrangle. Inside was a little park with benches and flowers and 3 tennis courts. So the 4 of us at the weekends, we'd go and play tennis for a long part of the day. And there was this young girl always sitting on the bench watching. And eventually she got to the fence and hung on to the fence. And I said to her, we'd finished our game, and I said to her, do you want to have a go? And she walked, and I batted a ball backwards and forwards to her, and we had some fun. That was the teenage Emma Thompson.
Oh, wow.
She used to bring us cakes, which even the birds wouldn't eat. And so she needed to brush up on her baking skills. But one day she said to me, and this is, it sounds very name-droppy, but it isn't. It's just a succession of events. And we actually started dating a little bit. And and so one day she said to me, my dad wants to speak to you. And I thought, here we go. This is the dad talk. But I was in my 20s then, and she was about 17, 18, about to go to university. She went to Cambridge University. And she said, my dad wants to talk to you. And I thought, oops, all right, shoulders back, let's do this. He was an actor and a producer. And he said to me, you've been very kind to my daughter. I said, she's my girlfriend, actually. Get it right, Dad. Yeah, come on. Anyway, he said to me, there's a movie premiere, and it's a Royal Command performance. And I'm ill enough, my doctors told me I can't go. Would you accompany my daughter to this movie premiere? Okay, free movie and probably a meal thrown in. I'm there. So off we went. And the movie was called Aces High. And Roddy McDowell was the principal actor. The film was about the Royal Flying School before it became the RAF, before the war. And they used to fly these canvas and plywood aeroplanes and chuck bombs out the cockpit, that sort of thing. The life expectancy of those pilots was 14 days.
Oh, wow.
And Roddy McDowell, as a young man, became the squadron leader because he'd survived 2 tours. He was there for a month.
15 days.
Yeah, so he became, he was the boss, and all these young kids out of university, anybody who could fly anything was drafted in. So that was the subject of the movie, but it was a Royal Command performance. And Emma and I found ourselves sitting one row in front of the Queen.
Oh, wow.
She was breathing down our necks, which was, in itself pretty strange.
You see, now that is something, because that's actual royalty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
total. So you are in awe of this.
Yes.
But the real kicker came when there was a presentation and we had to stand in line. So I'm standing next to Roddy McDowell and Emma's on this side. And I'm saying to him, what do I do? What are we doing here? What do we do? He says, shut up. Don't speak. If she speaks to you, just answer the question. Don't offer anything. Yeah. And we're standing, the two of us are shaking like leaves. We don't know what's going on. And she came along and she spoke to him, and then she shook my hand and she said, nice to meet you. She didn't know who I was from a bar of soap, but, she was very polite and moved down the line. I got to tell you, Emma and I didn't make the meal. We scarpered. We were so terrified. We just scarpered and ran home. But Emma and I remained friends for quite a while. She went off to Cambridge. She started with, I don't know if you've heard of Hugh Laurie and Stephen Fry. She joined that. They called themselves the Footlights, and they had a little dramatic thing going at Cambridge.
I'm a huge Stephen Fry fan.
Oh, yeah, he's great. And so she got all mixed up in all of that, and then her career took off. But I can actually say I was her first boyfriend.
Ah,
yeah. So
nice.
I hope you remember that, Emma.
Yeah.
And that first kiss everybody talks I don't know. But that was that. It was just circumstance. It wasn't planned or anything. It just happened, and just go with it,
Before we carry on, can we just fix Charlie's chair?
Oh.
It's making like a noise.
Oh, sorry.
Can you hear it?
Well, I'll stop wiggling.
No, you can't hear it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's a set of circumstances, and just go with it,
So you actually, which is another kind of we're going to get to the train story now, but this is another train that's happening in our podcast. We seem to be attracting all the ex-roadies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So were you born in Rhodesia?
No, I was born in Johannesburg in a place called Fontainebleau. And at a very early age, we moved up to Zambia. My dad went on to the copper mines. And then we were packed off to boarding school. Hence the train thing. And that was it. And then I never went back, really. When I matriculated, I went to Cape Town, to UCT, to my other mother. We were families. We grew up together.
So, okay. Tell us about the train thing.
Okay.
Which then goes to the boarding school.
The boarding school, yeah. The train thing was Zambianization was beginning to take place. So, they were beginning to take over, and quite rightly so in many respects. But your kids at school were being intimidated. Your 6 or 7 year old daughter was going to school with a 16-year-old black guy because they were on the same educational level. No fault, no blames attached. It just happened. So your kid's lunchbox didn't survive the first 5 minutes of arriving at school because the big guy would just take it off them. So the parents almost collectively decided to send their kids away to boarding school. And my 2 older brothers were old enough to start apprenticeships or think about working on the mines. But I and my siblings, 2 brothers and a sister, were sent off to boarding school. The old South African spoorweg, the green leather compartments that slept 4 beautiful things. And we had our compartment, the 4 of us. I think I was 9 going on 10, so I had to look after my siblings. And it didn't take long for another mother, this is in Ndola, we left from Ndola station, which was another copperbelt town up there. It didn't take long for the other mothers to say, look, could you keep an eye on Quercy or Susie or whatever? And it just snowballed and escalated into, basically I was looking after all of them, but not alone. I mean, there was a guy called Chalky White, the conductor. Lovely guy. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Fat Controller in Thomas the Tank Engine stories. He was the original Fat Controller. He was a little diminutive, 5 foot nothing, little tubby guy. And I said to him one day, how is it you always get the short straw on this train? He says, I volunteer. I love it. But between him and I, we got it sorted. We had to go through immigration, Northern Rhodesia to Southern Rhodesia, then into South Africa twice. And of the 460 people on the kids on the train, you could bet your boots you had 230 Mickey Mouses, a few Donald Ducks, and the rest of them were Minnie Mouses. And the old immigration guys used to just shake their heads and say, get out of my country, just go, just go.
But
we
okay,
did
so
that.
this immigration, wait, so the train, you took the train every day?
No, it was a 4 days and 3 nights journey down to Johannesburg, and then
To the boarding house?
No, we switched at Joburg to another train to Vereniging, and then the boarding school bus was there to pick us up, to take us to Meyerton. Now, Meyerton was a one-horse town. You know, it was a hamburger joint and a petrol station. That's all that there was. But this was Longwood House. It was actually a prisoner of war camp for the Italians during the Second War. So it was rondavels in a forest, and that was the school. So I looked after, I was just Chalky and I did what we had to do. And, we had a disciplinary code that only he and I knew about. If you were a little bit naughty, he moved you to the back of the train. And 2 reasons for that. These were the old steam locos. And there was a section, quite a large section, where they hooked a second steam loco on the front. So if you're at the back, you're getting all the soot. It's coming in. No matter what you do, you're getting the soot. So if you were naughty, Chalky would move you to the back. And the second little punishment, which we knew about, was you were always on the third sitting for the meal. So chances are your meal was cold by the time you got it. That concentrated your mind quite substantially. So we didn't really ever encounter too much grief. We had an initiation ceremony, which, if the mums could hear me now, I'm sure a bullet will come through your door. Your newbie, your first trip, as you approached the station, did you ever hear of a tapiologist? Tapiology was actually a profession, not a profession, but a job. These guys would sit just before the train station with a little ball-peen hammer and tap the wheels. And if it didn't have the right ring to it, they pull that coach out of, and take it into a siding and fix it. And they would just sit there and dink, dink, dink. And that's how they determined that the wheels on the train were adequate.
Buckled or
whatever. So
tapiologists,
we used to call them now. But the initiation ceremony, boys and girls, was as you were approaching the station, the train was slowing down. You got hung out the window by your feet and by your ankles, and you had to pick up 4 stones. And then the tapiologists would get in the way before you got your 4th stone. So they actually learned. It was quite funny. They learned, and they would just hand stones to the kids who were hanging upside down. But when you got your 4th stone, you were hauled back in. Look, if the platform arrived a bit early, they hauled you back in anyway. But that was,
But now by today's standards, right? Because today it's very dangerous to even think of drinking water from the tap. Because So you guys, by today's standards, would have been complete ruffians.
I don't think so. I was responsible. I'm sure.
Probably get prosecuted.
Yeah, I'm sure. But, we didn't have any real issues on the train journey. I mean, they were pretty well behaved. I mean, they're naughty things. You go over Victoria Falls, the little cushions, the little green leather cushions. You'd go up and down the train and steal other people's, because when you went over Bite Bridge, you drop-kicked these things through the window. But when Chalky arrived, you had your fault because you'd stolen somebody else's and that sort of thing.
So how many pillars?
School pranks.
How many pillars do you think are lying at the bottom of Vic Falls?
Hundreds. Yeah. But, that was school kid pranks, if you like. But you had to get through the day somehow, But it was fun. and then on to boarding school, and that's where we were. I mean, we never went back on the shorter holidays, only on the very long summer holiday because it was too expensive. Eventually, Dad could afford to fly us, so we would fly back, but only on the long holidays. These short holidays, we just stayed at school.
But I like it like this.
Okay, yeah, hair, makeup.
Yeah.
There we go.
Because I'm getting my dad's genes. Showing now, bald patch. I keep saying to my hairdresser, the barber, the only one in town that you go to, I keep saying to him, listen, dude, like, you see this bald patch, this little monkey butt happening here? Just shave off all my hair. And then Tessa goes, no.
No.
Do you dare do that?
Yeah.
And once.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit like me when I go. There's a girl who comes Wednesdays and Saturdays, and she says, "What do you want?" I said, "Whatever my wife wants."
Yeah.
I don't care.
No.
I saw on your Facebook page you had quite long hair.
In the circus.
Are we recording?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Because we're missing all this.
No, in the circus, yeah, we were all long haired. I did have down my back. Yeah.
This is now what we want to talk about now, the circus, right? Because that's like...
Well, let's finish the school because it's quite interesting. Yeah, I hope.
Let's carry on with the school because that leads into the...
It leads. It all leads, yeah. And I think I said to you, there's a thread of, opportunity. And I must tell you, about that, actually. I read a book many years ago, and I can't remember the name. But it's a book by Mark McCormack, who was an American lawyer. He started a company called IMG, International Management Group, and he's focused on golfers. His first client was Arnold Palmer and then Jack Nicklaus and so on. And he said, and I've never forgotten this, opportunity comes the way of us all. The difference is those who recognize it, and especially those who act upon it. And, opportunity has thrown itself at me many, many times, all of us. And occasionally I just pick up one and decide, okay, let's take a look at this.
Especially if opportunity comes dressed in a short skirt, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, never miss. Yeah. Yeah, so anyway, the train journey and Chalky White and so on. And I've got to say that when Chalky retired, I sent him to the end of the platform with Joburg when the train stopped. I said, you go stand at the end there. Every kid who got off that train put a parcel down at his feet to the point where he was only chin high, in gifts, because they all appreciated this guy for what he did for us.
How many years about was he your conductor?
Oh, at least 4. Well, then we started to fly, so we missed him. But he retired on about the 4th year that we were doing this.
And he was probably a conductor all his life.
All his life. He loved it. He was a spoorwegman and that was it. He loved it. I mean, he said he volunteered for that.
Do you think that Chalky's still alive?
No chance. No. I wouldn't think so.
Okay, so now you're at the boarding house?
Yeah. And it was the only co-ed boarding school in the country. And I don't think it was a 50-50 split. There were more boys than girls. From junior school through to matric. I think, if my memory serves me, there was something like 480 kids in the school. As I said earlier, it was a prisoner of war camp for the Italians. It was rondables in a forest. And we were just chugging along as normal. And one day, Mr. Clutie, headmaster, he owned the place. He called me into his office. I was 14, and I think it was about standard 7. I was 2 years away from matric. He called me into his office, and he said, "You're the train man." I said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." And he pushed a bunch of keys across his desk to me, and he said, "As of now, you are the head boy, and you are in charge." I said, "In charge of what?" He said, "Let's go." He preferred the look of the bottom of a Clipdrift brandy bottle than actually doing his job properly. And I was aware that my brothers and sister and I needed an education. So I took the keys and said, okay. And off I went. Got a lot of flack for it from the bigger boys in the first team rugby team and so on. But again, you know, by incorporating them, you know, you sort of...
You now have some dogs that can bite. Right?
Yeah, and you bring them on board and so on. And I was just saying to Tessa earlier, it was a co-ed boarding school. So my most onerous task at shower time was to get the boys out of the trees outside the girls' dormitory.
Yeah.
And we did that. I had six prefects helping me. And we did that because I bought them all catties. And so we'd walk through the forest shooting at the boys in the trees until they came down.
Peeping at the girls.
Yeah, or trying hard. So it was full of that sort of thing. But the full extent of it was I was in charge of everything. It was really, you know, it wasn't, I was going to say daunting. It wasn't that daunting. You know, you just got up and thought, right, I've got to do this. And off you went and did it. I didn't interfere with the curriculum, obviously. The teachers did that. But if they wanted exercise books or certain books or more pencils or whatever, they gave me a requisition form. I phoned the supplier, and it was really funny when they delivered and said, we need a signature, and I stepped up to sign. They wouldn't believe, you know, that this was authentic.
Yeah, schoolboy.
Yeah, this is not how it works. But eventually, you know, it was... The precedents were all set. You know, everybody knew what they should do. So I needed to assemble them for assembly. We do the whole prayer bit. We do write babies out, and dinners, meal times were the same. Little ones in first, and then, you know, and so on. And everybody sort of just fell into line. It wasn't like I needed to wield a big stick or anything. Just the catty to get them out the trees. Loads of incidences. One in particular, two of the prefects and I played soccer for Transvaal. So we had to go to these provincial matches. And one night, at about 10 o'clock, we came back into Meyerton, and the only hamburger joint was still open, and we agreed we were going to have a hamburger. And when I walked in, Kim Gea and 4 of her chums were sitting there, when they should have been tucked up in bed at school. And I walked over to Kim and I said, Kim, I'm very tired. Here's the deal. When I get back to school, I'm coming into your dormitory, because I had the key. Ready or not, I'm coming in. If you're in bed, all of you, that's it. Say no more. Now I'm going to have my hamburger, and that'd be the end of it. And I did. I walked in, and they were all in bed, and that was it. Closed the door, good night, and off I went. The following day, Mr. Clutie came to the assembly, and I was up there, you know, doing what I was doing. He never called me by my surname, and he said, Hartman, get off my stage. And I, whoops, you know. It turns out that the owner of the hamburger joint had phoned him and said, do you know 3 of your boys are in here? He said, oh, yeah, is Charlie there? Yeah. Oh, that's fine. He said, and the 4 girls? He said, what 4 girls? And I was busted, as simply as that. But I got back at him. I got angry, and I said, how do you expect me to run this place if I don't have some cooperation? You know, you're just interfering. Back off, you know. And I really had a go at him. And surprisingly, he did. And by lunchtime, I was the head boy again. But it was just that sort of incident. Loads and loads of pranks and stories. You can imagine a co-ed boarding school. It was, but it worked. You know, eventually it worked. And then when I finished, matriculated, I just said to my mum, I'm not coming home. I'm going to Cape Town. Because when we were in Zambia, we grew up. We were 6 kids, and the Wright family were 4 kids. And the mums just used to say, how many have you got? And if between them they had 10, that was okay. It didn't matter. If I came home in the evening and somebody was in my bed, I just went next door and got into a bed. And that was it. As long as the 2 mums had 10 between them. So it was like my second family. And they had moved to Cape Town, so I decided to go to Cape Town. And I started at UCT. And to supplement my living standards, I became the stage manager of KPAB, ballet company, the Cape Performing Arts Board. It was very new in that time. And so I was stage manager, and my girlfriend at the time was a girl called Ruth Ackerman, obviously a beautiful girl. I don't know if you remember that James Bond film where Ursula Andress came out of the sea and undid the zip with a white swimsuit. Well, Ruth did a Peter Stuyvesant cigarette ad, and she came out of the sea with that and took back cigarettes, that sort of thing. So we were there, and Michael, who was with me in the trapeze part, he and I sort of almost started it together. He was a dancer within KPAB. That's how I got the job. And then the trapeze thing happened.
Okay, so the trapeze thing is the circus days, because that's the really cool photo that we got. Remember the circus?
Yeah.
So how did the trapeze thing just happen? You just like sit there and say, listen, we need to swing off of ropes.
No, almost. We went, Boswell Wilkie's, which is the famous South African circus, came to Cape Town, and there was a flying act in it. We went, 4 of us, well, 5 of us. There's a mercurial guy called Keith Anderson. He was an artist of note, but, the 5 of us went to see this. And when the trapeze act came on, one of us said, we could do that.
And didn't you guys all go like, the fuck, we can't?
Yeah, that sort of thing. I did bring a photograph this morning. I don't know if you have it yet, but it doesn't matter. You'll find it.
We'll throw it up on the screen.
Yeah, where we're sitting, you'll see Steve Zitkoff is dragging Pam, who's like my sister, my other sister from another mother, by the hair. But in the background is where I'm sitting amongst all the poles, and Mike is sitting there, and we are sorting out. We went to the docks, and we begged, borrowed, and stole any pipe or pole we could find. And 2 old fishing nets that were rotten, so we had to crisscross the fishing nets. Then we went to Rondebosch to the YMCA, and we said to the director of the YMCA, listen, we'll train all these kids to do flying trapeze if you let us put our equipment up in your backyard. We didn't have a cooking clue about what we were doing.
And there was no Google to go, listen, who are you? Let's just find you. Are you legit?
No, and no YouTube to tell us how to do it. And we were so doff about it, we couldn't work out the dynamics of the 2 swings, the catcher swing and the fly bar. So we welded 2 bars together, and the catcher would lie back on his knees and hook his feet under the other one and just lie there. And we'd go pummeling into him because we hadn't got it quite. We all had to take a turn on that catcher's part where you get kicked to death and you spend your life with your arms over your head, so you didn't get a knee in the face. But we got it eventually. We worked it out, and we were training the kids. And I have to say that towards the middle 80s, so I was away in Europe by then, but towards the middle 80s, there was hardly a trapeze act anywhere in the world, probably South America only, that didn't have a South African member in their troupe. The kids just churned out of that YMCA like you wouldn't be. And Keith Anderson stayed. He never traveled with us. He stayed and ran the school. And we just churned out these kids. But we were there one Sunday morning, and this guy arrived with a leather coat, fox fur collar, big fedora hat, and a very long cigar. And he had his hand on the main pulley block, which we knew if he pulled that rope, the thing would collapse. So I said to Mike, who does he think he is? Let's go and kick his ass. And so
it was Vincent Churchill.
Yeah, so we dived into the net to go and kick. His name is, he's just passed away. His name is Lee Stath. And he was in the Encyclopedia Britannica, as well as the Guinness Book of Records and so on, for his exploits as a trapeze artist.
Oh, wow.
His troupe was called the Marrowleys. His wife was Mary, so it was Mary Lee Marrowleys. And they were Ringling Brothers in America and so on. And I'll never forget it, because we were going to go and beat him up. But he said to us, I was just enjoying a quiet drink on my veranda back in South Texas, and I'm not even going to attempt the drawl. He said, but I heard about these 4 kids who showed more enthusiasm than ability, So I thought I'd come and see for myself. And there he was, this absolute legend. So he tore it all down, he rebuilt it for us, and he showed us the proper way to do things. He became Mr. 10%, of course, but the benefit to us was he would pick up the phone to Cirque in Paris and say, I'm sending my boys. Yes, sign up. And we did 6-month stints, then it was Circus Knie in Germany, and then Circus Benneweis in Denmark, and this sort of thing. So we did 6 months, wherever we went. We went over you were on board the ships, we went over on the Pendennis Castle, which was the old SAF Marine line, and because of our kit, our equipment, it had to go in by boat. The first thing we did was we went over to Munich and we bought a bus. Lee had arranged all of this and we picked up our bus. It wasn't pop starish, but it nevertheless was a single-decker bus with bedrooms in it and a kitchen and a bathroom and what have you. And it was very comical. It was 4 teenage South Africans sitting up front in a bus. The steering wheel's on the wrong side. Everybody's driving on the wrong side. And we've got to get this thing back to the UK. And because we were in Billy Smarts at the time. So we drove by committee, and I was the driver normally, but it was very funny because South African with a British passport, with Spanish insurance, and it just went on and on and on and on. But we got it. So we lived in this bus. And the first thing we did is we bought 4 mopeds, because if you were in a building, and I'll tell you about the Danish side of life, but when you were in a building, you rigged your equipment up once, and that was it. And if you were lucky, you stayed in an apartment and had hot showers. But most of the time, you were touring in the bus. So we would get to a new location, a new ground. As long as our main pulley block went up with the tent, we were okay. We could rig from that. So we'd get on the mopeds and go into town. And that's what we did. We were kids, So we went exploring, and we never used the bath in the bus because the rule was if you bathed, you had to fill up the tank again. So we used those Turkish baths and those public baths and things. We had a great time, beaten with birch twigs and things. Our act, well, before we did that, sorry, just to backtrack a little bit, to prove to ourselves that we could do it, we did a tour of South Africa. We went around South Africa. And I don't know if you know Tiki the Clown. I've sent you a photograph of him, little Tiki. And his wife was normal size. He was, vertically challenged. And so was Fifi, his daughter. Lovely guy. And he came to us one day and he said, guys, in the back end of, Vereniging or whatever, Klerksdorp or wherever, they don't care if you do 3 somersaults with 4 twists in it from anything else. And we said, well, what do you recommend? He said, look at me. I make my living being a clown. You need to clown. And of course, I got the short straw. But what a man, what a gentleman he was. I didn't know this, but in the clown fraternity, you are not allowed to copy another clown's makeup. Yours has to be original, and then it's yours for life. Yeah, it's amazing.
So it's your identity.
Yeah, that's it, and you're not allowed to. So he designed my makeup for me, taught me how to do it, and taught me how to clown. So we threw clowning into it, and I'm sure it's not rocket science to understand that when you're 25, 30 meters up in the air, you sort of really need to know what you're doing if you're going to mess around up there.
Yeah.
And you'll see in one of the photographs, we even got to the point where the catcher would just pull my pants off. And net result is we had the audience exactly where we wanted them. Whatever you did from there was, golden. There was one thing I did, a back somersault. Instead of the catcher catching me, I would just slap his hands as hard as I could, hit the net and bounce into the sawdust, get up, dust myself off, climb back up. I could do it with my eyes shut. But I had them, we had the audience with us. So that's why we did the clowning, thanks to Tiki. But he was correct. He was right. He was absolutely right in what he did. Our act was 9.5 minutes, and it was Shirley Bassey's Big Spender. Do you know that?
Yeah.
Hey, big spender, spend a little. That was our music. when we got back to Cape Town, because of all our friends and family and what have you, our act was 9.5 minutes. We were up there for 42 minutes. They wouldn't let us come down.
Yeah.
It was magical. And I would go, and our catcher at the time was Martin. And I'd say, Martin, Mike's coming with a front somersault. Mike would go in and say, Cliffy's coming with a 1.5. Charlie's coming, with whatever. And the catcher was just tossing us back, he was exhausted. But it was great. That determined that we were good enough.
Yeah, I was about to say. I mean, if you have an audience's attention for 5 times longer than what was anticipated.
Yeah, but that was friends and family as well. But yeah, I mean, it worked. Tiki was right, obviously. Then when we went to Europe, we didn't clown. It wasn't necessary. We did all those 6 months in our bus. We were kids. I mean, we were jawling. We didn't take it seriously. Bit of animosity from the dyed-in-the-wool circus folk because we weren't taking it seriously. You also became top billing automatically. And you were the first act after interval because it's during the interval you put your net up. And in Europe, you didn't have any assistance. You did it. You did all the work yourself. Talking about opportunities and skirts, I mean, 4 young guys, long hair, torsos. The stake irons we used to put in the ground, they're about 1.5 meters long. And we had 4 sledgehammers and we stood around in a circle.
Oh, wow.
And we'd swing and we would swing the hammers and you'd go and these stakes. And the girls would come along and say, do you know where the trapeze boys are? And we'd say, no, they're not here, but we can sort something out for you. Complimentary tickets. And you knew exactly what seat number you were giving them. So when you walked in your tights and your cape and what have you, and winked at them,
the job done.
Game over. Yeah, that was it. It was a lot of fun. But we eventually got to Denmark. Lots of stories. I mean, it's just very funny. I mean, one in particular, we were going from, I think from Finland back into Germany. And as we were approaching the German immigration and customs, young Cliffy, who you'll see in one of the photographs, he was Mike and I grew up as brothers, and he's closer to me, or he passed away recently, but he was closer to me than my own brothers. We were just, do you know that telepathic thing you sometimes have? You don't need to speak. We used to fix VW cars, engines, and I'd hold up my hand. He'd put a 10mm spanner in my hand. I didn't ask him, but he was exactly what I wanted, and so on. So we were very, very close, and we adopted young Cliffy. He was a bit of a cheeky chappy, as which you would, aspire to. But and here's a trick he used to use. He used to pull his head, into his shoulders. And I can tell you there wasn't a bosom within 10 meters that didn't drag him in and hug him. And it worked like a charm. But he was our younger brother, and he was really, really great. And when we left Scandinavia, going back into Germany, I was driving again. The 3 of us, Pete, Mike, and I in the front. Cliffy's looking over our shoulders. Said, Cliffy, there's the immigration. We know you've got pornography.
It was during that time as well.
Yeah. What have you done with it? He said, no, I'm clean. They won't find anything.
Did they actually search you then? Yeah?
They would have. But anyway, the 3 of us turned on him and said, Cliffy, we know you've got magazines. Where are they? He said, I'm clean. We said, what did you do with them? He said, I put them in Mike's bag. So Mike freaked. I stopped the bus. And I've got to tell you, Cliffy came back to South Africa, and forgive me if I tear up a bit, because he was like my brother. He was dying. And this Indian guy down in the Cape picked him up and nursed him. And I heard about this, so I phoned. And he said, Muhammad, who was looking after him, said, you're the phone call he's been waiting for. And I said to him, excuse me, Cliff, do you remember that story with your magazines? And he started laughing. And Muhammad came on the phone. He says, that's what he's been waiting for. I said, Cliff, do you remember what happened? He said, yeah, you stopped the bus and you made me put them on the pavement. We put them on the pavement right outside the immigration building. And we didn't go. And sadly, he passed away the next day. Sorry. But we had lots of fun. But little Cliffy, if you hit him on the left shoulder and said to him, spin 3 times in that direction, he'd spin like a top. He was just unbelievable. He was just our draw card. So, yeah, so we did all those things. We ended up back in Denmark.
So Denmark is where you keep referring to the big accident.
Yeah, I'll get there now. We spent 6 weeks in Tivoli Gardens, which you would know about, which is great because, as I said earlier, you rig once and that's it. And we stayed in an apartment. Then we went on tour, and Sonny Benavice, the son, was in charge. He was the manager of the tent, and off we went. You may know the name Hillerød. Hillerød is a town in Denmark. We were there. And again, we'd been into town, and we knew the timing. So we were racing back to the circus and put the anchors on our little mopeds, because Sonny had dropped the tent by 2 meters because the wind was getting up, and he didn't want to explain to his father why he lost the tent. But you can imagine our equipment was rock steady. It had to be. And all our cables coming down were like guitar strings. You know, you would actually play a tune on them. They were so tight because everything had to be rock solid. By dropping the tent, everything was flapping. So I went to him and I said, Sonny, we're not going up there. It's a death trap. I'm sorry, we're not going. He said, you've got a contract. You're going. We couldn't, 2 of us, we realized, couldn't get past the net because
lowered down.
The rig had lowered down.
Yeah.
So we scurried around and we got little short poles and we put the net up. And I went to the guys and I said, boys, we can't get out of this. 1 trick each, double passage. Do you know what the double passage? If ever you see a trapeze act, almost the final trick is where 2 flyers cross mid-air, cross each other. And I said, 1 trick each, double passage, get off this thing before somebody gets hurt. And we did. In the double passage, I would go first, and I would do a 1.5 somersault. So you're hanging by your hands. You kick around and come in with your feet, with legs first. The catcher comes, puts his head up between your thighs, grabs you around the thighs, you hook your feet around his back, and off you go with him upside down. The idea then is you come back, Mike, my brother or whatever, he would mount the bar on through the middle and he would do a front somersault. So we would cross. I would be flying back to the swing. He would be flying to the catcher. As I hit the catcher in my first somersault, the crossbar from which the swing hangs has got 2 cables going up to hold the crossbar. This one snapped, just like a gunshot, because we'd been bouncing it. And he's crossbar did this. So instead of me coming back with him in a straight line, we were doing this. We were waving all over the place. When we sat down afterwards and talked about it, it's slow motion sort of thing. But anyway, the swing wasn't where it should have been because it was waving around. So I went down, hit the net, and it broke my fall, which is good. And I'm sitting on my backside in the sawdust. I look up because I should have been on the swing, because in the double passage, I would go back to the platform, kick off, come back with the swing, move over, give Mike the other half, and we go back together and do the whole ta-da business. But I'm sitting on my butt in the sawdust. Pete, at the time, the ring boys arrived, and the catchers always go up on a rope and they cross their feet, and it's all very macho. They swung the rope round and round and round until he could catch it, and he came down safely. But Mike was 30 meters up in the air. And being a trained ballet dancer, he did the perfect pirouette. And I should have been there, but I wasn't. And he came down. And the first thing you learn is to land on your back, because you can fold in your stomach. If you landed on your stomach, you break your back. It's like a trampoline.
Yeah.
So he went through his routine. I'm sitting there like a dummy. And I put my hands out. And of course, he went straight through and he hit the deck. And the blood started coming out of his mouth, and it was just chaos. Ambulance arrived, and I thought, there's no way I'm letting him go. So I dived into the ambulance with them, and they rushed to Copenhagen, a general hospital. And I don't know if you remember that. your days in Denmark, but it's like the 29 steps, it's the John Buchan steps going all the way up. And I'm running next to the gurney, and I'm telling these guys what to do with him, and I want him in plaster from his toenails to his neck. And they just politely turned me around and ushered me out the front door. And I'm standing there, ballet pumps, tights, lovables, which you might not know are ladies' elastic stretch pants. And that's what we used to wear under the tights and then fold them over. So I'm standing, ballet pumps, tights, lovables, full lunchbox on display, sequin belt to cover the band of the lovables, chest out here, hair down the back of my shoulders, little burki sienki. I'm in the gay capital of the world right now, and I'm not happy. And I've no cooking clue how I'm going to get back to the circus. At which point, Sonia Benavais, the daughter, came running up the stairs. And it was very cold. So she takes her coat off and she flings it over my shoulders. And I grabbed her wrist and I said, Sonia, you're not helping. She said, what? It's cold. What? I said, yes, but it's also pink and fluffy. And you're going to leave me here, bare-chested, pink and fluffy, in tights. She gave me her keys, said, get in the car. She drove me back. But then, because of that, I came back to London. I went back to London to arrange for Mike's medevac back. And the reason we don't have photos of that European experience is we realized, the other three of us realized, that this was a freebie and we could send all our kit back on this medical aircraft, which we did. And it all got lost here. But anyway, I then went to London to arrange for his medical evacuation. And also I phoned Keith and said, this has happened, we need a replacement. I was living in London with some friends in their flat, and London is hellishly expensive if you're not earning. And these guys said to me, there's a job going, and it was a job in Heels, which is the baby to Harrods. It did the same sort of thing as Harrods department store. And because of my design experience, I was in the kitchen. I was designing kitchens and long hair and all the rest of it. And the boss came to me one day and he said, listen, if it could happen to Mike, it could happen to you. Do you realize? And the light bulb went on. And so I phoned Keith that afternoon. I said, send 2 replacements. I quit. I'm done. I'm staying. And that's how I ended up in London.
So I would have imagined also that it's quite traumatic, all this, the accidents and stuff with the trapeze. But that also worked in your favor then, because then, the rest of what you've just told us happened.
Sure.
But, okay, so how did you end up living in Johannesburg, where you're living now?
Okay. After many years in London, I think I mentioned I was sitting alone. I'd just been divorced, and I came out to visit my mum. And I came back to South Africa in the end of 2008 and went on to the mines with your dad. And in 2017, we used to go fishing. A group of us from the mine used to come out to Johannesburg, to the Johannesburg Trout Association, HTA, on the dam, on the Ebenezer. And we used to take over the whole camp for the weekend and just have a great weekend. And I said to Bev one day, my wife, I said, do you realize how much we're spending on accommodation here? Why don't we have a look around? So we did. And we found this place, this little farm that we had. And it was our weekender. We used to come just at weekends. Then in 2017, the mine in its wisdom, or the new purchasing manager in his wisdom, decided that I ought to hand over 1.5 million to retain my contract, which was 30 years old at this point. I mean, the paper was just, the contract was falling apart. They just used to stamp it every 5 years. And he said, I'm not renewing your contract.
Because you were working on the mine. You weren't working for the mine. You were a contractor on the mine.
Yeah, they have something called a permanent contract. And because of the longevity that we had on the mine, they have those. And we were a contractor, I was responsible for keeping the place cool. I did all the refrigeration and the air conditioning and whatever. And that led to the school story over there. But in 2017, this new purchasing manager said, I'm not renewing your contract. And he gave me a month to get off. And I went home and Bev and I discussed it. And I said, you know what? I think he's done us a favor. Let's get the hell out of here. And we did. So our weekend cottage became our home. And we had this little plot farm on the top of a mountain outside Heinsberg. And we've been there ever since.
And it actually helped you get out of what is now left of Palabora, which is also sad, eh?
It's very sad. It's actually pathetic.
Yeah.
To the point where we have a son still there, family, and our grandchildren. And
Who I know from school.
yeah,
Actually,
Mike.
yeah.
You know Mike. And we've decided Palabora's got nothing we want, and we haven't been back. It's very
It's terrible.
sad.
I
It's
go
very
and
sad.
I go and visit my dad every so often, or I go do business there, and it's almost as if everything I remember from my childhood doesn't exist anymore.
No.
My
it's terrible.
childhood has been erased.
Yeah, it has. I mean, it's terrible. I mean, it used to be, but it used to win Town of the
Yeah.
Year or Town of the
And not just that, it
whatever.
looked a lot
And
like European,
Yeah.
a European town.
when I first got there, it
Yeah.
was, and now it's
Remember the bicycle roads that they had?
yeah.
And the other day I took my kids there and I said to them, you see, have you noticed that the pavements in Palabora are a lot wider than what the pavements are that you're used to?
Yeah.
It's because we used to have bicycle roads that mimicked, they were mini versions of the actual roads.
Yeah, cycling.
Little stop signs and everything. And that is just gone.
Everything's gone. I mean, it's
There's no more medical facilities.
Yeah, no, it's not quite a ghost town, but it's a mining town now, and it's just dust and heat.
I remember it was beautiful at one stage.
Yeah, so that was it. So that's how I ended up in Heinsberg, and now I'm fully retired. Probably the best thing that's happened to me, because I don't have deadlines, I don't have customers, I don't have overheads and that type of thing.
So do you miss which part of your life? Because I assume, look, I've still got a ways to go to get to 75. But even now, it's quite sad for me to think about it. I used to be able to remember certain parts of my time on the cruise ships. And when the memory comes up, I would be able to still smell the salt, the sea.
Sure.
And I could feel the balustrades. Now, I can't anymore. I can remember, but I can't remember everything in detail anymore.
Okay, well, this is opportune that you explain that, because